Tinicum Township Planning Commission Minutes April 26, 2022 Cole, Terry Johnston, Neil Sullivan Members present, John Clement, Carl Ruthart, Joy Von Gluck, David Malice, absent, John Classe of Gilmore and Associates Engineering and Consulting, Scott McMacken, Rusty Fox, others in attendance, Kristen Pionzio of Humburg, Rubin, Mullen, Maxwell and Lupin, Eric Richard Trefiro and Mark Modges of 26 Cafferty Road, Robert Molinaro of 45 River Road, Joe Lebowski Law, Scott McMacken of Cohen Associates, Rusty Fox, General Manager at M&W Valentine of Del Val Soil and Environmental, Tom Martin of Cafferty Road, Gavin Lebowski of Caltwater, David Malice. Public comment, none approval of minutes. Motion by Ms. Von Glueck and seconded by Dr. Malice to approve the minutes of the Planning Commission meeting of March 22, 2022. Unanimous vote to approve. New Business 1. Centennial Barn Loaning Hearing Board Application. Recommendation to the Board of Supervisors. Kristen Pionzio, attorney for applicants, presented a history of the property and the proposed changes and variances requested. She presented a 4-page copy of the zoning permit plan for a minor subdivision dated March 24, 2022, attached below. It included the plan as prepared by Gilmore and Associates along with 3 color-coded plans dated April 18, 2022 showing the various stages of the proposed project. Applicants proposed to dissolve the septic system and a small common element to create 2 separate lots. An adjoining lot existing Centennial Barn condominium, which consists of 2 buildings sharing one condominium's common element with an eye towards one. Allocating portions of the is in the process of being purchased by the applicants to be incorporated into the common element to the 2 newly created lots to bring both lots closer to conforming with township regulations, and to allow for the eventual creation of 2 individual septic systems once the current system is no longer operational. Variances are requested to conform with setback regulations. Mr. Ruthart asked if a variance is also necessary to allow for the creation of 2 new lots that share one septic system. Since the township's septic ordinance stipulates that septic systems must be located on the same parcel as the structure they will serve, Ms. Pionzio replied that that would be a soldo issue and not part of the current application. Mr. Ruthart pointed out that the application identified 2 dwellings on the property sharing a single septic system, but in fact there are 3, since the Trefiro Modges dwelling contains a separate rental apartment. Joe Valentine from Del Val Soils advised that he had been working on identifying replacement areas. He said that the 2 buildings currently have their own septic tanks and share one absorption area. The eventual plan is to create a new absorption field on the larger Trefiro Modges lot to serve their tank, and leave the existing absorption field on the smaller Molinaro lot to serve their tank alone. A replacement absorption area has been identified for the smaller lot, and both a primary absorption area and a replacement absorption area have been identified on the larger lot. Dr. Malice noted that the submitted plans do not include a specific timeline for the creation of 2 separate septic systems, nor the locations of the new absorption field and the 2 replacement absorption fields. Mr. Ruthart asked that subsequent septic plans account for 3 dwellings instead of 2 to include the existing rental unit. He also asked if the current absorption field on the smaller lot is outside the setback lines. Mr. Valentine said it is not, but that it meets the requirements of state regulations chapters 71, 72, and 73. Mr. Ruthart suggested that nonetheless it might require an additional variance to meet Tinicum's standards. Ms. Pionzio said she would confirm whether the septic system is required to be within the building envelope and whether an additional variance request is called for before the applicants meet with the zoning hearing board. Dr. Malice noted that the property falls within 2 zoning districts, Village Center and Residential Agriculture. Mr. Classe said that the variance requests are based on the stricter standards in the Residential Agriculture District. Dr. Malice reviewed the zoning ordinance standards required for the granting of a variance. It was agreed that, with 2 exceptions, that each of the requirements were satisfied. Motion by Mr. Ruthart to recommend, with the understanding that the Planning Commission was not provided with review comments from an engineer or the township's zoning officer, that the Board of Supervisors not oppose the variances as written provided that the septic systems on both lots will comply with all township ordinances and setback requirements, and that applicants provide written plans that include the location of the existing system, the modifications planned, and the locations for the new system and replacement systems, including a schedule for completion of the work. Seconded by Mr. Clement. Unanimous vote to approve. 2. M&W request for waiver of land development. Gavin Lebowski of Lebowski Law Review ed. project, which sought a variance for the construction of a simple metal pole building to house a crane used in the manufacturing process on the M&W site, an approved non-conforming operation located in Lone VR. The zoning hearing board granted a variance with regard to height and some conditions, including the color of the building exterior and appropriate screening as advised by an arborist landscape architect. The applicant currently requests a waiver of the land development process, which is required whenever changes are proposed to a non-residential property. Mr. Lebowski suggested that in this case the land development process is unnecessary given that the proposed building would be built on an existing pad, and that there would be no changes to the intensity of use, imperviousness, storm water, existing vegetation, along with a proposed plan to improve buttering and lessen the number of employees, water and sewer, etc. A plan was presented depicting all the impact on neighboring properties. Motion by Dr. Upmalis to recommend that the Board of Supervisors grant a waiver of land development requirements for the proposed project. Seconded by Mr. Clement. Unanimous vote to approve. 3. BCC Solar Suggestions, review of the Bucks County Planning Commission's review comments of the draft solar ordinance, a discussion with Tom Martin of Cafferty Road, who works with a company that manages large-scale solar operations, regarding the proposed limits for the height of ground-mounted solar panels and the maximum power generation for residential solar installations. Mr. Martin stated that calculating the size and scale of a solar system based solely on average load wouldn't be enough to accommodate the addition of solar-powered battery backup and suggested that the power generation limit be based on power usage instead. Dr. Upmalis noted that the proposed solar ordinance, as written, stipulates that residential system not exceed the amount required to generate 110% of the energy requirements of the property, adding that if a homeowner were to include a backup battery bank as part of a solar system, by definition it would be considered part of the whether additional language regarding battery backups was necessary. Property's energy requirements. Dr. Upmalis recommended further review regarding 4. Possible review of Bitcoin and/or wood-fired boiler amendment. Regarding wood-fired boilers, Mr. Ruthart suggested adding to the existing ordinance. Was agreed that the issue would be revisited at the next meeting of the planning. That any wood-fired boiler system be required to meet the most recent EPA guidelines. It commissioned after members had sufficient time to review the existing ordinance, necessary housing for Bitcoin mining operations, and how the current noise ordinance. The issue of Bitcoin mining was discussed, including which district's area appropriate applies. It was agreed that further research and discussion was called for. Old business. None. Discussion. Mr. Clement asked what emergency plans are in place within the township regarding the Nockamixon Dam. It was agreed that further research was necessary. Adjournment. Motion by Mr. Ruthart to adjourn. Seconded by Mr. Clement. Unanimous vote to approve. Tinicum Township Planning Commission. Dr. David Upmalis, Chairperson. John Clement, Secretary.